Ladies and gents, this is the Vorkuta Gulag, Hellhole of the USSR by the channel Simple History. So, Vorkuta Gulag, or a Gulag. What is a Gulag? It's basically a labor camp. This is the prime and one of the best example of why Joseph Stalin was a big, colossal a-hole. So basically, he just imprisoned people without much of a cause. He just gave some reason like he's a spy, she's a spy, this and that, and just filled up this labor camps with people, and then made them work for hours and hours, 14-15 hours a day, with barely any food or barely any sleep. People were starving to death left and right because he didn't even see them as people. He saw them as some kind of resources to keep his industry, country's industries going. So people were dying left and right by starvation. People were getting beat up, and it was one of the most inhumane thing you can see of. So obviously, if you think like if you go with this strategy and people are just dying left and right because of starvation, isn't that bad for Stalin? That his work will go down because people are dying in the camps? Well, no, he's a dictator. So obviously, when the people died and labor camps started to go down in population, he had to fill them up again. Think about that. This is labor camp, and it was a necessity for him to fill it up again to keep his industries going. So he imprisoned other people without much of any cause, and just said that he's a spy. Why? Because there is some reason to it. So shut up, why? And just put them in the labor camp without any crime or anything, just so he can keep his industry going. What pisses me off is everybody knew that there can't be this many criminals, or all of them are criminals. So obviously everybody knew that Stalin is just imprisoning these people left and right just for his gain. So why did he go and try to make excuses like he's a spy and she's a spy? Why didn't he just go and I'm imprisoning him because I can, since I'm a dictator? That would have been better than calling people spy and making excuses, because at least then he would have been a bit honest. Giving excuses like he did this, she did that. The basic one was, which didn't require much of a thought, is just calling somebody spy, because then you don't have to explain anything further. Like, we have evidence he's a spy or she's a spy, and go to labor camp. That was just effed up, man. The Vorkuta Gulag. I think this was one of the main camps, main labor camps, which most population. There were lots of gulags, but this was, I think, the main one. So let's see what Simple History gives what detail.
This episode is brought to you by the Ridge Wallet. It's light, sleek, strong, and industrial. It doesn't fold or awkwardly bulge in your back pocket, and it's seriously changed our whole pocket situation. Most people are still carrying wallets designed in the 90s. Why have we moved on from large flip phones to smartphones, but still carry bulky wallets? The Ridge Wallet. It holds up to 12 cards plus room for cash, and there's over 30 colors and styles, including carbon fiber and burnt titanium. Seriously, I really love this thing, but don't take my word for it. Listen to their 30,000 five-star reviews.
If Simple History loves it, I love it too.
Materials means that each wallet comes with a lifetime warranty. You could buy this one wallet and carry it for life. The Ridge team is so confident that you'll like it, they'll let you test drive it for 45 days, and you can send it back for a full refund if you don't love it. Get 10% off today with free worldwide shipping and returns by going to ridge.com/simplehistory. That's ridge.com/simplehistory and use the code SIMPLEHISTORY.
Yeah, people, if you are in need of a wallet, then go to this website, ridge.com/simplehistory. Use the code SIMPLEHISTORY and buy the wallet, because you need a wallet anyway. And supporting one of your favorite channels is a better way of going about things. So support Simple History by going to website and buying the wallet.
The Vorkuta Gulag, 1932 to 1962. The Soviet Gulag prison system, set up in the 1920s by the ruling Communist Party, were a series of forced labor camps. They held prisoners in harsh living conditions where any treatment was expected to be extreme and inhumane. Prisoners were both Soviet and foreign, the camp holding prisoners of war, dissidents, political prisoners, enemies of the state, and common criminals. Their diet provided little sustenance, leaving many near starvation. Beatings were common in the Gulag system, often brutal and unforgiving. Prisoners were sentenced for multiple reasons. For example, John H. Noble was arrested on charges of spying. The Noble's camera manufacturing company was merged with other German companies by the Soviets shortly after.
There you go. He's a spy. That's all. That's all you need. You want to imprison somebody? He's a spy, and just put it inside some kind of labor camp. Why not? Who cares? I'm a dictator. Who's gonna say anything? That was just so effed up, man.
World War II. It was common for the Soviet authorities to arrest citizens in order to seize their property, and they were often given charges that would be hopeless in fighting. Stalin found the camps to be an efficient way to boost his country's industrialization, and no one was truly safe. Many of these prisoners never made it out alive, often being worked to death or dying of malnutrition. Among the worst of the gulags was the much-feared Vorkuta Gulag, known by the official title Vorkuta Corrective Special Labor Camp No. 6. Based near a coal mining community in the Komi Republic of West Russia, just north of the Arctic Circle, the Vorkuta Gulag was established in 1932, remaining active until 1962, and contained over 73,000 prisoners during its peak. The prisoners were assigned to provide labor for the nearby mine and the local logging operation, which was thriving at the time. A railway was constructed.
73,000. That's too big. And I bet most of them died by some nefarious reason like starving or something weird. That is just so effed up, man.
Using the prisoners to ship coal and timber out of the area. The Gulag's perimeter consisted of tall barbed wire fences, watchtowers, and armed guards. Beyond the perimeter, there were regular armed patrols accompanied by guard dogs. Soldiers would accompany work details, ensuring no escape attempts were successful, though the reality was that there was nowhere for the prisoners to escape to. Vorkuta was in the middle of nowhere. The land surrounding Vorkuta, teeming with wolves.
There you go. That's what I wanted to say. If any of people know the geography of Russia would know that if you are near the Arctic or somewhere, if you are at some place, other places are so far away and so just it's mostly empty place, and all of that are ridiculously freezing cold. So that makes an incredible place to keep a prison. Like even if people escape, they're not gonna stay alive, so nobody's gonna escape. That is so effed up, man.
Was the Soviet authorities' natural barrier between the Gulag prisoners and their freedom. And the climate in northern Russia was brutally cold, with extremely short summers and long winters. In Vorkuta, for 3 months out of the year, the sun did not set. Constant daylight ensued as
And yeah, by the way, in that area, in that part of Russia, most times temperature in winter goes as below as what, -30, -40 or something. Oh, that is just horrible, man.
another form of torture provided by nature herself. This phenomenon is known as polar days. The regime at the Gulag was harsh. Prisoners were faced with 16-hour days of hard labor and an underwhelming diet of rye bread and buckwheat porridge called kasha. The lack of food was subsidized with potatoes and a little meat or fish.
And it's not just about lack of food. If you are living in freezing cold temperatures, you need extremely high calories. Like people who normally would eat 2000 calories or something, if they are in extremely cold temperatures like -30 or something, they would need to eat 5 to 6000 calories just to keep their body warmed up. So times like that, when they are barely getting 1500 calories, obviously most of them just starve to death or freeze to death probably.
Prisoners often took to eating rats, stray dogs, or cats that might have inevitably wandered into the Gulag. Earning extra food was possible if you hit your unrealistically high work quota, but in order to do so, the prisoners had to work so hard that it had an adverse effect on their already deteriorating health. The result? Some prisoners literally worked themselves to death. The sheer hunger, excessive work, and living conditions often caused illness or death, so some prisoners resorted to getting admitted to the hospital where conditions were better and they could recover for a while. In order to get there, they resorted to cutting off their fingers, reopening healing wounds, or even drinking kerosene. Some prisoners of war from World War II were kept at the camp. This included the English trader Reginald Pleasance, who had joined the Nazi Waffen-SS as a...
Damn, these animations are really... he's hitting really hard. Man, I always wondered this. In here in USSR, like Stalin, and in Nazi Germany, there was Hitler and labor camps of them. So I get it. Stalin was an a-hole. Hitler was an a-hole. But how can people who are actually guards there, actually the part of army or whatever, these guards there, how can they be this effed up that they are fine with doing all these things? Like seeing people literally dying left and right, beating people up. I mean, Stalin's an a-hole, but if you just go with it, aren't you the same level of a-hole? Because even today, lots of developed countries and lot of good enough places, where if some bad element comes in the power and do something bad, I'm pretty sure people, and even the people in the army, people in the government, would revolt. Like, I'm not doing this inhumane thing. I don't care what you say. So why that didn't happen in Nazi Germany, in USSR? Why didn't people like this, the guards, like, you know what, this is too effed up. I don't care what Stalin says. I'm not doing this. Why didn't people just revolt? Like, Stalin has lost his mind. I'm not killing people like this. So if Stalin was a-hole, Hitler was an a-hole, and the guards, the people, soldiers like this, and they are at same level of a-hole for doing things, being fine with it.
As a sharpshooter, he spent 6 years in the camp before being released to the British authorities. And during the Korean conflict of the 1950s, it was rumored that a number of captured American pilots were also imprisoned at Vorkuta. Among the vast number of prisoners, American military personnel were no exception. One notable example being Homer Harold Cox, a U.S. military policeman who was arrested whilst off duty in East Berlin in 1949. Cox wouldn't be free of the Soviet tyranny until 1953. The American prisoner John H. Noble reported as many as 3,000 American prisoners in the Soviet camps. The freedom Noble gained came into being once his note was delivered to his German relatives. This note was then passed on to the United States authorities, and President Dwight D. Eisenhower intervened to get him freed. The corruption within the Gulag, combined with the atrocious conditions, became so bad that in 1953 the prisoners went on strike. One of the key leaders of the strike was John H. Noble. They demanded such things as lower production targets, wages, and to be allowed to write more than 2 letters a year. At first, the authorities tolerated this act of rebellion, being that it was relatively peaceful. Moscow sent commissioners to negotiate with the prisoners. Some minor concessions were made, including being granted the privilege of being allowed to write 2 letters a month and the right to 1 visitor a year. But the prisoners felt this was not enough and refused to go back to work. After 2 weeks, the warden's patience had run out. He sent in the army to arrest the ringleaders of the strike. The situation turned violent, and the army openly fired on the prisoners. It is estimated that over 60 prisoners were killed and hundreds more were injured. Afterwards, conditions at the Gulag slowly improved, and in 1962, the camp was permanently closed down, with most of its inmates released. As for the Gulag system itself, the permanent dismantling began during the 1950s. This was in part due to the economic and political viability of maintaining the Gulags diminishing. Political reform played a key role in the regression of the camps, with Nikita Khrushchev coming to power after the death of Stalin. Khrushchev began a series of reforms, known as de-Stalinization, when he came to power in 1958. Finally, in the early 1960s, the last remaining gulags were closed down, Vorkuta being one of the last to close.
Hello. Oh, okay. It's for the dramatic effect. Okay. So lots of people were, released. That's good. I thought most of them are going to die the way all this labor camp go around. Obviously, there was such thing as de-Stalinization when Stalin died, because Stalin was just complete mental. It's just ridiculous. I mean, Hitler had some extreme ideology. Stalin was just, really mental in some way, because he was painting over people. Apparently he was photoshopping people before even the softwares or computer existed. He was painting over people and killing over his friends just because he had some doubt they might not be in his best interest without even knowing them. he's there having dinner with them, everything's going fine, and they just get killed because Stalin just thought they could be a problem. It's just so stupid. I mean, he was really narcissistic in his, uh, security and things. Like he cared about his security more than any other ideology. Hitler had ideology, but he wasn't as mental in his security as Stalin was. He wasn't fearful. He wasn't killing his generals left and right just because he thought, just had some fear that they might be, revolt against him. But Stalin did that, killing of his friends, killing of his general. Stalin was just mental. So yeah, Hitler, Stalin, it's just really horrible people existed, man, around the same time. That is something. Stalin and Hitler. What are the chances of that? Stalin and Hitler both were around at the same time. Both are one of the most horrible people that ever lived. Alright, if you like my reaction, please don't forget to like and subscribe.